You know, as we look around the world and see all of the things that are unfolding, we look to scripture and prophecy and we see the things that are told that would happen are actually happening today. You know, there's prophecies that pertain in the scripture, the likes of Revelation and Daniel, and we see many things that are going to unfold in the not too distant future. One of the great topics, or one of the many topics that many people talk about, is the Antichrist. Who is the Antichrist? Where is the Antichrist from? And there's many conceptions of where he is going to arise from. What I wanted to do today was to take you on a journey, and by the time this video is finished, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of where we can see the Antichrist is going to rise from, where he will actually come from. Like always, remember to watch it in full to get the full concept, but also smash the like button to get this out to as many as possible, and enjoy the journey as we go through scripture to find out who and where the Antichrist could possibly come from. One of the main passages of prophecy is found in Daniel chapter 9. When you can get a true understanding of this prophecy, which is the 70 weeks and what's pertained within it, it opens up the rest of prophecy we see in the New Testament, and we get a clear understanding of what Jesus was saying. You know, there's three areas or three places that people believe the Antichrist could come from. Those three are the Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire, and some would branch off to the Catholic Church. The other one, they would say, he rises from the Islamic kingdom or the Islamic Empire. And the other one people kind of would say, or a popular one, would be that he will be a Jewish leader. Because what does scripture actually teach us? And when we read into Daniel, there's only three passages in Daniel chapter 9 that we look at, and it's from verse 25 to 27. That's so packed with essentially where he's coming from. And this is what it reads: after the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end will come like a flood. War will continue to the end, and desolations have been decreed. And he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7, and in the middle of the 7 he will put an end to sacrifice and offering at the temple, and it will set himself up the abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. This scripture alone is packed with so much information. When you read that scripture and break it down, we can find out where exactly the Antichrist comes from. And in verse 26 it talks about the people of the ruler. The people being the Antichrist will descend from the people that are going to come to destroy the temple, which was going to happen in 70 AD. The word that's used there for people is a Hebrew word, and it's pronounced uam, and we would spell it as am, which means ethnic group. And where we would find this even further is when we go to Genesis 11. The same word is used in Genesis 11 verse 6, which is the Tower of Babel. And when you read the scripture, it talks about the people and how they were one language, one culture, and this is essentially what that word is used for. So we know that it's an ethnic group that came and destroyed the temple in 70 AD, and it's clear that the ruler that Daniel talks about who's coming will come from the people who actually destroyed the temple. Now when we go into the historical element and look at 70 AD and what happened with the actual temple, the Roman Empire was in charge at the time. And when you look at the Roman Empire, it was so vast, it was so big, spanning from Western Europe all the way down towards Greece, into Turkey, and down around the Middle East, and even some of the northern countries of Africa. It was a vast empire. Now remember, at that time they could not use Italian people to spread out their armies into every country. So what they would do was they would send their generals, their top generals, into each branch and region, and they would have locals be their militia or their military. In 70 AD, you know, it's read and it's wrote down that they sent 5 legions into Jerusalem at the time of the siege in 70 AD. And those 5 legions were Legion number 5, Legion number 10, Legion 15, Legion 12, and Legion 3. What people seem to forget about this time was an absolute savagery. What was happening in Jerusalem, there was an uproar, absolute catastrophic time in Jerusalem and for the Jews around that time in that area. As the rebellion was happening, the legions were sent in, and the legions literally wiped out a huge amount of people. Now, when we look at the 5 legions who were sent, 4 of those legions were mostly made up of the Assyrian kingdom, and I would call it that. So the Assyria kingdom. And when we look at the Old Testament, you know, we always use the word Antichrist. Now, the word Antichrist is really a title, not a name. But the word that's actually used in the Old Testament is the Assyrian. And we see that in Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Micah. This is not a new concept, but just not something that's generally taught. The main scripture, the main passage that we focus on today, as well along with Daniel, we find in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. That's what it says. He will oppose all and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. And there's 2 things that we want to look at there. Daniel 11:38, there's only one God though that he does recognize, and it says, instead he will honor a God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold and with silver and precious stone and expensive things. The God of forces is the only God that the Antichrist recognizes. And I would ask you, who is the God of forces today? But the main one is when he proclaims himself to be God. This is not proclaiming himself with the mouth. The Greek word is this Greek word. It means to declare with deed and with action. He shows himself that he is God, and this could be absolutely used from an Islamic point of view. 100%. When you study into Islam and the things that the Antichrist, what we believe the Antichrist will do, they believe is okay. Scripture is clear. For me, when you read Daniel, where he's coming from, which I believe to be the Assyrian Empire, which is made up of a fair amount of different countries. It's not Syria, but you have parts of Turkey in there and parts of Iraq in there as well, and Lebanon and Jordan. It's a vast area, but it's all concentrated around the Middle East. The Antichrist will do what Jesus done. Nowhere in Scripture did Jesus say with words that I am God. But one Scripture stands out we find in John. Jesus said, he said to them all, before Abraham was, I am. That's a claiming to be God without actually saying it. Let's be honest, Satan imitates everything that God does. I would advise you to look into prophecy, because it's very clear. When you do a small little bit of study, we can actually find the nucleus of the things that are about to happen. Let's be honest, things are happening at a very rapid speed, and we need to be aware of these things. I believe, I'm not here for the Antichrist, but it's good for people to pinpoint to where someone could arise from. But remember, of all the chaos that's going on in the world, God is always in control. Keep that faith.